a joke. Let her go. Our freaking politicians insider trade all day. There is an actual app out there. This is crazy. I just found this out. There's an actual app out there that will allow you to place trades based on the trades that our politicians do. How messed up is that? That's not cool, you know. It's kind of funny, but it's sad. It's funny sad, you know, that's the way it is. And it's just like, oh my god. You gotta be kidding me. Anyway. What can you do? So now we're gonna have our little ghost people are gonna be invading Earth. Yep, so you know that can make people. I get why people don't give a shit anymore. You know, people watch our leaders and our famous, or the people we're supposed to be looking up to, just breaking the law all day, acting a fool, getting away with it. You know, the youth of today, crotchety old man rant coming in. You know, the youth of today, their music glorifies it. You know, you can't help anybody anymore. There's this case I just heard about. This guy was like on the side of the road. He was like walking. And this lady who was on her phone with her headphones in just kind of walked out into traffic. So he grabbed her and pulled her back before a car almost nails her. Now that dude is getting sued by that lady for an unwanted touch. Can you believe that? And a court's actually hearing it. That's the even crazier part. It's like, wow. That's just unbelievable. So I understand why everybody's all crazy these days, I guess. Best word to use. So our little group of guys and girls here, flying things, are headed for the Earth. This is their little column of people, things heading over there. Maybe on the moon here we'll put some craters in there. Nothing too crazy. I'm also gonna put a flag on there because we landed on the moon. But this flag will be it'll be like such. Now let's have a little thingy there. Yeah. A question mark flag on the moon. I personally think we landed, but I mean, I know other people don't believe we did. They put up, you know, some, you know, proof, I guess you could say. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think we just did it, you know, a lot of math and a lot of money, and we just did it. And I don't think it's that amazing. I think it's, you know, and we've done it a million times since then, just without people, you know, and a million times before that, just without people. You know, we send probes and stuff everywhere because it's so much easier and cheaper. And to me, I don't feel like it was that crazy of a thing. You know, the Russians, the Soviets, I'm sorry, and America had already sent things to the moon, dozens of things, the Rangers. Just, you know, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It makes for a good conspiracy, and unfortunately, people believe it and other conspiracies because people overall have lost their faith in government and institutions because of the constant BS that they do. Just like that thing I said earlier, that stock trading thing, where you can piggyback off the government's stocks, you know, that explains it perfectly right there. People have lost faith. Back in the 60s, you know, before Vietnam really destroyed it, people still had faith in the government and what it was capable of doing. That's why, to me, it's not that big of a deal. I'm like, people had a lot more faith and patriotism back then, which is two things that you would need in order to do that. You know, you'd have to have patriotism to want to beat the Russians to convince the whole population, hey, we got to spend, billions of dollars, 1960s billions, which is like basically saying we need to spend a third of our GDP on a rocket to go to the moon just to say we did it because the Russians will do it first, and that's not good. And people were like, yeah, I'm patriotic enough to get behind that and take a hit from that and get behind that. Today, people are like, no, people can't even agree on if a show was good or not, So, I don't know. I think today it's going to be harder to get back to the moon than it was back then, because it's just going to be ridiculous. But to me, it's not that big of a deal. And it's like people are like, oh, we got to beat China to the moon. It's like, we already did. We beat them in 1969. Who cares? Let China go to the moon. Let them do whatever they want. I don't care what China does. We need to, we live in a multipolar world now. America's not the top dog. We are a top dog, but there are other dogs in the yard now. And there's nothing wrong with that, because when we were just all powerful America, we kind of, got a little bit of a stick up our ass about how great we were. And don't get me wrong, I'd rather be an American than anything else. But, balance is needed in all things in life. Having a couple powers in the world to keep each other's in check is good. It's balanced. The best time in American history was at the height of the Cold War in the 50s and early 60s, when we were, technically at threat of nuclear war at any minute. So, just saying. There needs to be balance. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Oh, we're doing our little Earth now. Yeah, it needs to be balanced, people. But yeah, that's why I don't think it's that big of a deal, and that's my argument, at least. I know people feel passionate about the moon and all that, and I get it. But it's all because people lost faith in the government and the institutions. That's why it's easy to believe, especially for generations that weren't from back then. I'm in my 40s, so I remember America when it was a lot better than it is now, without the technology or as much of it, and when there was a little more patriotism out there. But I can also understand why the younger generations these days don't really, they don't have that faith. And it's sad, yes, but I get it. I get it. It's my little Earth. Yep. What kind of, leave a comment. What kind of if you're like Star Trek, if you're a Star Trek dork like me, what kind of, do you have an idea for a show or, a fan film or something? What would you do? I have other ideas too, besides that one that I just talked about from Star Trek 4. But that was one that I just came up with when I was watching Star Trek 4 one day. I was like, what if all these people went and hung out at a dive bar at night and talked about this, along with the missing whale lady? Because that lady just would be missing. She jumped on Kirk, got beamed in, and then went to the future right away. So, she didn't even go to her apartment and grab her shit. And back in the 80s, they would just probably chalk it up to, well, she was raped and murdered by some psycho. Unfortunate, but reality of living in the big city. So, yep. Well, so that's my episode. Or my fan film. Yep. Oh, no, I went over it. It's okay. We're gonna fix it here. Yep. That's my fan film. Never had much, idea of a Star Trek fan film. Or I'm sorry, Star Wars fan film. I do like Star Wars. I don't really, a lot of people, again, just like Picard, people have been like, new Star Wars is horrible and it's all part of the culture war bullshit, and I get it. They've taken your idols and brought them up to spec, for the modern audience, whatever the hell that is. Yep. Squeaky wheel gets the grease, people. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Nothing new. Yep. I was watching this thing the other day on cloned meat. And they're like, yep, I don't think it's in America, I think it's in Canada. They're gonna clone meat, from cows and I don't know what else. I imagine just cows at the moment. Maybe everything. I have no idea. Because there's different ways, I don't know how that's gonna work, honestly. Because, in Islam, they want halal food. It's a certain way of slaughtering the animal that is just in their practices. And, the food has to be labeled as such. This is halal food. So, I don't know what they're, how they're going to get around that one. I just, I don't know. I didn't know. So, now this is the point where I got to ask myself, is this space and this space and that space, or is this space and this space and that space? Now, when you're coloring, you got to think of that, because you're like, well, I'm going to have to make black background here, for space. So, I think in this case, I'm going to make it, this isn't space, so this would be space, and this would be space. Yeah. So, that's where we put our little stars in the background. And you just do that by different dots from different pin sizes, right? So I got a 0.03 right here that I'm using. You gotta be careful, otherwise that'll happen. And if that does happen, just, turn it into a little planet in the background. Oh, what planet is that? Planet 9. Yep. Crazy stuff, crazy stuff. You see that new robot China came up with the other day? It was like strutting down the thing. I don't know. The whole robot thing is, I'm still kind of iffy about that. Like, do I want a robot in my house? I don't know. They can't even keep my data safe. How are they going to tell me some robot's going to be cool in my house and not hack me to death with my own kitchen knives, Like, how about that? How about we start with getting rid of micro fees and keeping my data safe? It seems like every other day there's some breach. Oh, AT&T breached, or, your hospital records are out there now. And it's like, go figure, that's why I'm getting 9,000 spam calls a day. So it's like, baby steps. Keep my data safe. Once you've proven to me that you can keep my damn data safe, then I will let the robot into my house that will use my kitchen knives to hack up vegetables. Okay? Okay. Okay. Not space, not space, space. So, yeah, that being said, once you can keep my data safe, then we'll talk about that, period. I don't think there's anything wrong with that expectation of society. I think the real problem is that they don't want to keep your data safe. Well, if we kept it safe, we wouldn't be able to sell it to third parties so that they could blow you up all day and spam call you. Duh. So, that goes back to my main argument of that people are greedy, and no matter what it is, if people are involved, it's going to suck because people are greedy. That's why communism's never worked. Communism is a perfect form of society. The people own the means of production and all that kind of stuff, and everybody's accountable to themselves and to that. I'm not advocating communism. Why? Because it doesn't work with people. In Russia, or I'm sorry, the Soviet Union, communism, the only fat people were the people in charge. Everybody else was skin and bones and waiting in bread lines. So, I don't know how people didn't notice that. How do you not notice that? How come all the bosses are fat and never do anything but yell at me all the day? I mean, it's just, it's never going to work. People are greedy. People are always going to be greedy. There's nothing you can do about that. That's just, I hate to say it, but that's just the way it is. We'll put some bigger dots in here now. So, in order for that to work, it would have to, I don't know. It would have to be like a post-scarcity society like Star Trek where they have replicators and they can replicate stuff. And that's when it doesn't matter anymore. You know? And you'll never get people are just greedy, like I said. You know, in that kind of, in a true communist society, you know, somebody would say, well, everybody works to better society, right? Okay, that sounds good. But somebody is going to go, well, why did I become a doctor and go to medical school for 16 years to have the same standard of living as the trash man who didn't even graduate high school? You know, nothing against either profession, by the way. That's a big part of it. So, what do you do about that? What can you do about that? I don't know what you can do about that. Where's my number 2? Number 2. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the world's gonna do. I hope it can figure it out. I think it's like I said the other day, it needs to be some kind of combination. Or it could be like Wall-E, that'd be okay, right? Just let the computer go on full auto pilot and then we'll go from there. And that's about all we gotta do about it. Yeah, I'm surprised that's the only time my phone's rang, you know? It's like I was talking about the spammers, you know? The spammers are always, they're omnipresent, you know? Spam me all day long. Drives me freaking crazy. Drives me crazy. But yeah, it's like, I thought they were gonna get rid of that. Didn't some freaking president say they were gonna get rid of spam calls? I don't remember who it was. So we'll have our little portal opening up here. What? The portal opening up, the sun's watching, the earth's shaking. Yep. I need a... two should do it. Yep. The spam calls drive me insane. And it's like, what's the point of these, you know? I don't have a warranty. I don't have any of that stuff. Quit calling me. So what do you guys, have you guys heard about that one thing, the 3-eye atlas? What do you think that's all about? Distraction? Is that a distraction, or is that actually, it's probably just a freaking comet. It's not exciting though, you know what I mean? Being a comet isn't exciting enough. It needs to be an alien mothership to pull me out of the drudgery of my boring everyday life. You know?